Happy South Carolina Clemson week, everybody, and welcome back into the recruiting rundown here on Gamecock Central. Kendall Smith joined alongside of Wes Mitchell. Wes, got to start it off and say happy Thanksgiving and happy Thanksgiving to all of you watching as well. How was your day, Wes?
It was good. I mean, I'm still recovering, ate way too much, but yeah, I'm excited. This week is always fun. It's very unique. Rivalry week is, it kind of gets interrupted by Thanksgiving, and then you're right back to talking about the huge game and going to be a big recruiting weekend for South Carolina as well.
I love how you talk about Thanksgiving being the interrupter of South Carolina versus Clemson week. That just goes to show everybody watching how important this week is. And if you're watching this show, then you darn well know how important this weekend is for South Carolina and for Clemson as well. Such an incredible rivalry, one of the best in college sports. And it's not just about what happens on the field, West. There's so many other elements that go into this weekend, including recruiting. So we're going to get into all of that today. Let's just start it off generally, though, Wes. Obviously, this weekend means so much to so many people, including these recruits. So, how big is this weekend from a recruiting standpoint for the Gamecocks?
Yeah, I think, we always say recruits don't make decisions based on one game. And that is the case no matter how big the game is. That's the case even with this game this weekend. So, I think certainly from that standpoint, nobody's going to commit to South Carolina or Clemson just because one of those teams won the game this year. However, I think for one, for the greater trajectory of South Carolina's program, to guarantee you're going to go to a bowl again, to get to 6 wins, to sort of put yourself in a position to you at that point, I look at it like you salvage the season, which at one point, I mean, you look back, South Carolina was 2-6 and really in danger of it being a really, really ugly year. So that helps just from the perception of it with recruits. I think in this case, beat Clemson twice in a row, if South Carolina wins this weekend, that sort of just changes how people view this rivalry. I mean, Clemson had won it so many years in a row. It was a huge deal just to break that streak last year. I think, Kendall, it would be just as big to sort of show, hey, last year was not just a one-time thing. It was not a fluke. You've beat them 2 years in a row now. It helps with the overall perception. I think mostly with in-state recruiting, and we know how much Beamer has really made that a priority for him and the staff.
And not even just winning this game, but I also think the atmosphere of Williams-Brice Stadium and seeing it at night under the lights for these recruits to have the chance to witness that firsthand is such a huge deal. So obviously the crowd and the fan base are going to play a big role in that as well, and potentially swaying some of these guys to come play for South Carolina. But Wes, before we get any further, I want to give a big thank you to the sponsor of today's show, someone who's a really good friend of yours. And if you're interested in franchising, he is definitely your guy.
Yeah, contact Andy Ludicky today. Go to myperfectfranchise.net or just give him a call, 404-973-9901. Andy is not new to many of our Gamecock Central long-term readers and viewers here on YouTube and on our video platforms. And basically, if you want the short version of what Andy does, he is a franchise consultant. He's also a franchise owner, so he has that experience. But what a franchise consultant does is they help people find franchises that fit their skill set, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. That could be if you're ready to just completely leave your current job and sort of go for that American dream. Maybe you want to start a side hustle while still working your current job. Maybe it's somewhere in between that. You just want to diversify, build some wealth, and leave a legacy for your family. Andy's here to do that for you, and most importantly, his services are 100% free. He can help you if you have any questions about business ownership. Again, 404-973-9901. Just shoot him an email to andy@myperfectfranchise.net. As always, we appreciate all of our sponsors here on Gamecock Central, Kendall.
Yeah, absolutely. Really love what Andy does over there. And if I was making a franchise, which, 23 years old, I think I might be a little bit young for that, but you're never too young to do anything, I guess. So, yeah, could definitely reach out to Andy and see what he has available. Really good stuff and appreciate him. But, Wes, want to get a little bit more into recruiting here and talk about some of these more specific names, including Daniel Hill, who has yet to make a decision. He's a four-star running back in the class of 2024 out of Meridian, Mississippi. And it's kind of down to South Carolina and Alabama. So as we always say on this show, big boy recruiting battle. If you had $1 for every time we said it, you'd probably be able to start a franchise with Andy, no problem. So Wes, where does Daniel sit right now with South Carolina?
Yeah, it's really interesting. This thing, I believe, has turned to where you would say South Carolina has the momentum again. He put out his official top three a few weeks ago, maybe even before that. South Carolina, Alabama, Tennessee. It's kind of been a South Carolina-Bama battle for some time, like you said. And for a while, I think some of us were kind of assuming, hey, this was going to end up being Alabama. I do think as time has progressed, as he has obviously not committed to Alabama during that stretch, despite taking a bunch of visits there, it has kind of slowly turned a little bit back towards South Carolina. And he is currently an expected visitor for South Carolina this weekend. He is told On3's Chad Simmons he's going to be in town. That will be a guy I will be watching very closely to try and confirm, does he make it in? It's a little bit longer trip for him than maybe some of these other guys, Kendall. So, you want to confirm he actually makes it in, but if he does, and I feel actually pretty good about where South Carolina sits regardless, but if he makes it in this weekend, I think that will be yet another sign that South Carolina is maybe the favorite here. He's going to make his announcement January 6th at one of the All-Star games, so still some time to go, but as the season itself winds down, a big late season opportunity for South Carolina. Some of the commits will be there. Dante Reno will be there, and so just a chance to remind him of all the reasons why he was going to pick South Carolina initially when he had that announcement day and ended up, pushing it back. So I think he's probably, if you're going to create like a list of storylines, Kendall, he's one of the first guys you mentioned. Another guy that I think is worth mentioning and sort of singling out, if you want to talk about 2024, is Jerome Simmons. So Jerome is a JUCO defensive lineman, but is originally from the state of South Carolina. He went to Bamberg Earhart. So we've seen South Carolina go this route several times before. You go back to Javon Kinlaw. You look at Elijah Davis, who's on the team right now. Guys that were elsewhere, Devontae Davis, who were from the state, went to JUCO elsewhere, and now have an opportunity to get back home. South Carolina offered him last month. He's got several big offers, including Georgia, but he's going to visit this weekend. And I think a chance just for South Carolina to also remind him of, hey, you've got a chance to come back home, play in the SEC. I think South Carolina is probably the favorite there anyway, but a chance for them to potentially extend that this weekend.
Well, if you get any of these guys around Dante Reno, they'll probably be swayed, I would guess. Dante Reno, like the ringleader of this 2024 class, just doing a fantastic job and has for years at this point, getting these guys to come to South Carolina and really encouraging them to be a Gamecock. So he'll be in town this weekend as well. So a good chance for him to maybe bond with some of these guys that are considering South Carolina. But we talk about Daniel Hill. There's also another big name who will be in town this weekend, most likely at the South Carolina Clemson game. That is Michael Smith, the four-star tight end, committed to South Carolina, but a couple schools trying to weasel their way in there and maybe flip him. Those include Auburn and Tennessee, so two fellow SEC schools. How big is this weekend, Wes, in terms of the Gamecocks really keeping Michael and making sure that he doesn't flip?
Yeah, this is a situation we've been monitoring for a while. To be completely open, it's kind of on the South Carolina side. I think South Carolina feels pretty good about holding on to him, but there's just enough out there that makes you say this has been worth monitoring. Now, he, as far as I know, did not visit anywhere last week, despite him being a likely potential visitor at South Carolina last week. But also, Tennessee was trying to get him on campus for their game and was anticipating him possibly being in Knoxville. That visit did not happen. Now, his high school quarterback is committed to Tennessee, so there is a connection there that has kept them involved. Auburn, despite that connection at Tennessee, I think right now, right this second, Auburn is South Carolina's biggest competition. And Auburn has anticipated for quite some time the possibility of getting him on campus in Auburn this weekend, trying to get him to the Iron Bowl, which Auburn's obviously hosting Alabama in that big game. So that will be something to keep a close eye on. I believe, based on what I'm seeing from his Auburn sites out there, they at least have him down as a possible visitor at Auburn. So again, at South Carolina, I think he's expected to be in town. I think he's saying all the right things. I think, he's obviously still committed, but there's enough out there for us to monitor this. So, does he visit anywhere this weekend? Where does he visit? I think that would be very telling. Michael Smith doesn't take a bunch of visits. So, I think this is something just for us to keep an eye on, and been committed for a long time. Quietly, Kendall is actually one of their highest rated commitments. Like, this kid's way up there, and I think would have an opportunity to come in and play quite a bit at tight end for South Carolina next season. So they're doing everything they can. Jody Wright, heavily involved here, recruiting him just as if he was an uncommitted guy, continuing to put in that energy and effort. And South Carolina will do everything they can to make sure they get him locked in with this December 20 early signing day coming up.
They'll be here before we know it. Wes, getting towards the end of this show, want to finish off with another question about South Carolina and Clemson this weekend. Any other names that you have? So who else is coming this weekend that fans should know about?
Yeah, so I'll tease everybody to head on over to GamecockCentral.com. We do have I would still call it a little bit early list, even though it is Friday. We hope to add some more names to that as this day progresses and into Saturday. But as of right now, as you would expect, some 2025s. We've seen, most of your 2024s out there, Kendall, are already committed. They already know where they're going. This has been a big couple of months for 2025 targets getting on campus, starting to kind of formulate their own lists. Hey, who do I like? Who am I chopping off my list? Who do I want to continue to consider? So for South Carolina, you got some big names on there. Amari Adams, who is an in-state kid, 4-star defensive lineman. He's expected in town. I think he's already tweeted to confirm that. He's been on campus a ton. So just, somebody to keep an eye on as well. Jonte Gilbert, he's been on campus a bunch, 4-star defensive back out of Atlanta. DeMarcus Leach, another in-state guy to Abbeville, defensive back that has an offer from South Carolina. And then we've talked about this before, South Carolina getting so many top offensive linemen on campus. And that's going to continue as you get into the 2026 class. Darius Gray, already one of the top offensive tackle prospects in the country. Desmond Green from Timberland here in South Carolina. He's going to be a national recruit on the offensive line for that class. So that is by no means the full list whatsoever. Go check that out. There are more names getting added there by the minute. So check it out. That'll be the updated list. But those are some names for Gamecock fans to keep an eye on that are both highly recruited and where you have that strong mutual interest between the prospect and South Carolina.
The grind never stops. It's Thanksgiving week, or I guess I should say it's South Carolina Clemson week with Thanksgiving sandwiched in the middle there. But our
interrupting it for just a little bit, Kendall.
That's right. Our whole crew at Gamecock Central is working hard to keep you all updated on everything you need to know. So again, head over to GamecockCentral.com. Follow us on social media at Gamecock Central, and get ready because tomorrow night, 7:30 on the SEC network, it is the greatest rivalry in college sports. Sorry, Ohio State and Michigan. Got to call it what it is down here in South Carolina. We know it's the best. South Carolina taking on Clemson. It's going to be a good one. Wes, we appreciate you as always. We appreciate everyone who is out there watching. Stay safe. Have a great rest of your week and stay up to date on GamecockCentral.com.